My son hacked his billionaire father's account for child support of 10 years, then the worst case happened. FBI. We have a warrant. The pounding on the door echoed through the small house like gunshots. Lena Cross stood frozen in her son's bedroom, watching as 10-year-old Evan's fingers flew across 3 computer keyboards with terrifying precision. Don't answer it, Mom. Please don't answer it. Evan, stop. Just stop what you're doing right now. I can't stop. If I stop, they'll find everything. They'll see what he did. They'll see the other family, the offshore accounts, everything. The pounding grew louder. More insistent. Mrs. Cross, we know you're in there. Open the door now or we'll break it down. Lena's hands trembled as she reached for her son's shoulder. This is my baby, she thought. My 10-year-old baby who just hacked into his billionaire father's bank account and transferred $500,000. My genius son who the FBI is about to arrest for trying to get the child support we were owed for a decade. Mom, I'm sorry. I just wanted him to pay. I just wanted him to see us. To acknowledge that we exist. I know, baby. I know. This is your final warning. Evan looked up at his mother, tears streaming down his face, his fingers still dancing across the keys. And in that moment, Lena Cross had to make an impossible choice. Protect her son from the consequences of seeking justice, or let the law destroy him for exposing a truth the powerful never wanted revealed. But before I tell you what happened next, before I show you how this nightmare unfolded and changed everything, you need to understand how we got here. And trust me, this story will make you question everything you think you know about justice, about right and wrong, about what happens when a child takes on a billionaire and loses everything. If you've ever felt powerless against someone with money and influence, if you've ever wondered whether one person can stand up to a broken system, then you need to hear this story. Hit that subscribe button right now because what you're about to hear will stay with you long after this video ends. This channel is growing because of viewers like you who believe in real stories about real struggles. So subscribe, and let's grow this community together. Now, let me take you back to where this all began. 6 hours earlier, before the FBI, before the lawyers, before everything fell apart. The notification sound pierced through Lena Cross's lecture on Victorian literature. She ignored it, continuing her analysis of Jane Eyre to 23 disinterested community college students who were more focused on their phones than on anything she had to say. Another ping. Then another. Her phone buzzed insistently against the wooden podium, the vibration growing louder with each alert. "Excuse me," she murmured, glancing at the screen. Her breath caught in her throat. "Bank alert. Deposit received. $500,000. The room tilted sideways. Lena gripped the podium's edge, her knuckles turning white as the blood drained from her face. 23 pairs of eyes suddenly locked onto her with interest. The first genuine attention she'd commanded all semester. "Class dismissed early," she managed, her voice sounding distant and hollow, like it was coming from underwater. "Read chapters 12 through 15 for Wednesday." Students gathered their belongings with the chaotic enthusiasm of unexpected freedom, chairs scraping against linoleum, backpacks zipping, voices rising in excited chatter. But Lena barely registered their exit. She stared at her phone, refreshing the banking app again and again, certain the number would vanish, revealed as some cruel glitch in the system. It didn't. The memo line read exactly 4 words. Adjusted child support arrears. 10 years. With interest. Lena's hands trembled as she sank into the nearest chair. 10 years. The exact duration since Marcus Hale, tech billionaire, industry titan, her ex-husband, had walked away from their marriage, their unborn child, and every responsibility that didn't come with a stock option or a board meeting. She'd been 26 then. Pregnant and terrified, married to a man who loved algorithms more than he could ever love her. The divorce papers had arrived via courier, clinical and efficient, just weeks after she'd told him about the baby. No fight. No conversation. No explanation. Just legal documents and a settlement offer that barely covered her medical expenses. Marcus had paid the court-ordered minimum ever since. Always exactly on time, never a penny more, transferred through automated systems that required no human contact, no acknowledgement, no relationship. For 10 years, Lena had raised Evan alone on a literature instructor's salary, shopping at thrift stores and clipping coupons while Marcus's face graced magazine covers celebrating his latest billion-dollar acquisition. Now this. Lena called the bank from her car, hands shaking too badly to trust herself behind the wheel. The customer service representative confirmed what she already knew but couldn't believe. The deposit was legitimate, processed through an international wire transfer from an account registered to Marcus Hale. But there's been no court case, Lena insisted, her voice rising with each word. No legal proceeding. No contact from his lawyers. How is this possible? I'm sorry, ma'am, but we only process transactions. You'd need to speak with the account holder about the source of the funds. Lena ended the call and sat in the college parking lot as the autumn sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of amber and rust. Students passed by her windows, laughing and chatting, their voices muffled and distant, living normal lives where $500,000 didn't just appear out of nowhere. The number felt obscene, impossible. It was more than she'd earned in the entire decade since Evan was born. Her mind raced through possibilities. A mistake. Some automated system malfunction. Or had Marcus finally developed a conscience after 10 years of calculated indifference? The thought made her laugh, a sharp, bitter sound in the enclosed space of her aging Honda. Marcus Hale didn't make mistakes, and he certainly didn't have sudden attacks of paternal guilt. Every move he made was deliberate, strategic, designed to maximize his advantage and minimize his obligations. Which meant this money was something else entirely. Lena's phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something, instinct, curiosity, dread, made her swipe across the screen. Mrs. Cross. The voice was male, professional, with the crisp enunciation of expensive legal training. This is David Thornton, General Counsel for Hale Technologies. I'm calling regarding a security breach that occurred earlier today. Lena's stomach dropped. A security breach? I'm afraid so. We have reason to believe the transaction you received this afternoon was unauthorized. We'll need you to return the funds immediately to avoid prosecution for receiving stolen property. Wait. Lena's voice hardened with a mother's protective instinct. Are you telling me someone stole this money from Marcus and sent it to me? A pause. When Thornton spoke again, his tone had shifted, become more cautious, more calculating. The situation is complex, Mrs. Cross. Perhaps we should meet in person to discuss the details and your legal exposure. Who did it? The question escaped before she could stop it. Who accessed his account? The silence stretched for 3 heartbeats. 4. 5. Lena could hear her own pulse pounding in her ears. Your son, Mrs. Cross. Evan hacked into Mr. Hale's personal accounts approximately 6 hours ago. He bypassed military-grade encryption, circumvented multi-factor authentication, and executed a complex wire transfer that our security team didn't catch until it was already complete. The world stopped spinning. Evan. Her brilliant, beautiful, frustratingly stubborn son. The 10-year-old who taught himself programming languages before he could properly tie his shoes. Who built computers from spare parts scavenged from electronics recycling centers. Who asked questions about his father with decreasing frequency each year, the hope in his eyes dimming a little more with each non-answer she provided. That's impossible, she whispered. He's 10 years old. Age appears to be irrelevant when it comes to cybersecurity breaches, Mrs. Cross. Your son is exceptionally talented. He's also committed multiple federal crimes. Computer fraud and abuse. Wire fraud. Theft of a controlled amount. Each charge carries significant penalties. Now, if you'll cooperate with us, we may be able to resolve this quietly, but time is of the essence. Mr. Hale is considering his options, and I assure you, they include criminal prosecution. Lena's hands had gone numb. I need to talk to my son. Of course. But Mrs. Cross. Don't touch that money. Don't transfer it, don't spend it, don't even look at it. Any movement of those funds will be considered evidence of conspiracy. Are we absolutely clear? She ended the call without answering and drove home on autopilot, her mind spinning through the impossible reality. Evan had hacked Marcus's accounts. Her fifth grader had somehow penetrated the security systems of one of the world's most powerful tech companies and extracted $500,000. The worst part? Some small, terrible part of her felt proud. The house was dark when she pulled into the driveway, except for the blue glow emanating from Evan's bedroom window. Lena sat in the car for a moment, gathering herself, trying to construct the conversation she needed to have with her son. How do you ask your 10-year-old why he committed federal crimes? How do you explain that justice and law aren't always the same thing? Inside, she found Evan exactly where she expected. Hunched over his computer, 3 monitors displaying cascading lines of code, his face illuminated by the screen's harsh light. He didn't look up when she entered, didn't acknowledge her presence at all. His fingers continued their dance across the mechanical keyboard, each keystroke precise and purposeful. Evan. His fingers paused over the keyboard. Slowly, deliberately, he swiveled in his chair to face her. Even in the dim light, she could see the defiance in his eyes, the set of his jaw that reminded her so achingly of Marcus. I know, he said simply. You know what? I know they called you. I've been monitoring your phone for the past 3 hours. He gestured at one of the monitors, where her call log was displayed in perfect detail, every number, every timestamp, every word captured and analyzed. The lawyer called at 5:47 p.m. You were in your car. You didn't answer for 4 seconds. Lena's legs gave out. She sank onto his bed, the faded superhero comforter bunching beneath her. Evan, what did you do? What he should have done 10 years ago. His voice was steady, matter of fact, the tone of someone who'd calculated every variable and accepted the results. I calculated it. Minimum child support for a billionaire in California should have been approximately $50,000 per year based on his income. He paid you $800 per month. For 10 years. That's $403,200 he owes you. I added interest. 20%, compounded annually. That's fair, right? That's what credit cards charge when people don't pay their debts. Evan. I didn't take anything that wasn't ours, Mom. Now his voice cracked, and she saw the child beneath the frighteningly competent hacker. I see you. I see how you wear the same 3 outfits to work. How you pretend you're not hungry so I can have seconds at dinner. How you walk to campus when the car needs gas because you can't afford to fill the tank and buy groceries in the same week. Tears burned Lena's eyes. Baby, we're fine. We're doing fine. We're not. The words exploded from him, 10 years of suppressed pain erupting all at once. We're not fine, and it's not fair. He has 17 cars, Mom. 17. I looked up the registration records. He bought a yacht last month for $12 million. $12 million. Do you know how long you'd have to work to earn $12 million at your salary? 192 years. How do you even know these things? Evan's expression shifted, became guarded. I've been watching him. For 2 years now. Since I was 8. Lena felt cold. Watching him how? His emails. His financial records. His calendar. His security cameras. Evan turned back to his computer, typing rapidly. Images flashed across the screens. Interior shots of a sprawling modern mansion, sleek office spaces, a man in expensive suits moving through his day with the unconscious confidence of someone who'd never questioned his place in the world. Marcus. Older now, distinguished in a way that made Lena's heart twist with something she refused to name. The Marcus she'd married had been hungry, driven, burning with ambition that consumed everything in its path. This Marcus looked satisfied, settled, his sharp edges smoothed by success and privilege. He has another family, Evan said quietly. The room spun. What? He got married 6 years ago. To someone named Victoria Ashford. She's a venture capitalist. They have twin daughters. Charlotte and Sophia. They're 4 years old. Each word landed like a physical blow, precise and devastating. He goes to their ballet recitals. Every single one. He coaches their soccer team. Last month, he took them to Disneyland for a week. They stayed at the Grand Californian Hotel. $2,000 per night. Lena couldn't breathe. Marcus had another family. Daughters he showed up for. A life he'd built with someone else, complete with all the involvement and presence he'd denied Evan. I'm sorry, she whispered. Evan, I'm so sorry. Don't be sorry. His voice had gone flat again, emotionless, protective walls slamming back into place. Just let me fix it. Fix it how? The money is just the beginning. Evan pulled up another window, this one filled with file names and directories, thousands of documents organized with meticulous precision. I have everything, Mom. Every email he's ever sent. Every financial transaction. Every contract. Every secret. I know about the offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands. The shell companies in Luxembourg. The patent theft from smaller competitors. The NDAs he's paid to silence former employees who discovered his fraud. Evan, you need to stop. Why? He spun to face her, and the anguish in his eyes broke her heart. Why should I stop? Why should he get to pretend we don't exist? Why should he get to have a perfect family with perfect daughters while we struggle to pay for my school supplies? Why is it okay for him to abandon us? Because what you're doing is illegal, Lena said, hating herself for the words even as she spoke them. Because they'll prosecute you. Because you're 10 years old, and this could ruin your entire life. He already ruined it. Evan's voice rose, cracking with emotion. Every birthday, every Christmas, every father-son event at school where I have to pretend I don't care, he ruined all of it. He doesn't get to walk away without consequences. That's when the knock came. Sharp and authoritative, designed to intimidate. Don't answer it, Evan said immediately, his fingers flying across the keyboards with renewed urgency. Mom, don't. Another knock, harder this time. A voice called through the door, cold and official. FBI. We have a warrant. And that's where you came in. That's the moment where Lena Cross stood in her son's bedroom, watching him frantically delete evidence while federal agents prepared to break down her door. That's the moment where a mother had to choose between protecting her child and obeying a law that had never protected them. But here's what you don't know yet. Here's the part that makes this story even more devastating. Lena opened the door. 3 FBI agents stood on her porch, badges displayed, weapons holstered but visible. The lead agent was a woman in her 40s, dark hair pulled back severely, eyes that had seen too many terrible things to be shocked by one more. Mrs. Lena Cross. Yes. We have a warrant to search these premises and seize any computer equipment belonging to Evan Cross. We also have authorization to take him into custody for questioning regarding multiple federal crimes. He's 10 years old. The agent's expression didn't change. Age doesn't exempt anyone from federal law, ma'am. I need you to step aside. They moved through her house like a tactical unit, efficient and thorough. Lena stood helplessly in the hallway as they entered Evan's room. Her son sat perfectly still in his chair, hands raised slightly, as if he'd practiced this moment in his mind 1,000 times. "Evan Cross, you're being detained for questioning regarding violations of the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act, wire fraud, and theft." The agent moved to his computers, began disconnecting cables with practiced efficiency. "You have the right to remain silent." "I know my rights," Evan said quietly. "I also know you're required to have a parent or guardian present during any questioning of a minor. I know you need to take me to a juvenile facility, not an adult detention center. I know you have 72 hours to charge me or release me." The agent paused, surprised. "You've done your homework." "I always do my homework. That's why I'm here." They packed his computers into evidence boxes, sealed them with official tape. Lena watched, numb, as they dismantled her son's entire world, piece by piece. The monitors. The keyboards. The custom-built tower he'd assembled from recycled parts. Every wire, every component, every dream he'd built in this small room disappeared into cardboard boxes. "Mom," Evan said as they prepared to take him away. His voice was small now, frightened despite his earlier bravado. "I'm scared." Lena broke. She rushed to him, pulled him into her arms, felt his thin shoulders shake with suppressed sobs. "I know, baby. I know. I'm going to fix this. I promise. You can't fix this. Not against him. Watch me." They took him anyway. Led him out of the house while neighbors peered through curtains, whispered behind hands, judged without knowing. Lena stood in her driveway and watched the FBI vehicle disappear around the corner, taking her son to a place she couldn't follow, couldn't protect him. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "This is just the beginning. Marcus Hale doesn't forgive. He doesn't forget. Your son embarrassed him, exposed him, challenged him. And now you'll both learn what happens when you go to war with a billionaire. You should have taught him to know his place." Lena stared at the message, rage building in her chest like a physical force. Know his place. As if her brilliant, hurting child should have accepted abandonment quietly. As if suffering in silence was the price of being poor. She called the public defender's office, got transferred 6 times, finally reached someone who could help. The news wasn't good. "Mrs. Cross, I have to be honest with you. Your son is facing serious federal charges. Computer crimes against a high-profile victim. The prosecution is going to make an example of him. He's 10 years old. I understand. But the law doesn't really account for age when it comes to cyber crimes. We've seen kids as young as 12 tried as adults for hacking. What are we looking at? Best case scenario? Probation, community service, restitution. Worst case? 5 to 10 years in juvenile detention, followed by a permanent criminal record that will destroy any chance he has at a normal life." Lena's world collapsed. Over child support. Over money that was rightfully theirs. Over a father who'd abandoned his son and never looked back. The first court appearance happened 48 hours later. Lena hadn't slept, hadn't eaten, had spent every moment researching lawyers she couldn't afford and legal precedents that didn't apply. She walked into the juvenile courthouse on shaking legs, surrounded by other parents whose children had made mistakes, committed crimes, fallen through society's cracks. Evan was led in wearing a juvenile detention uniform, gray and shapeless. He'd lost weight in 2 days. His eyes found hers across the courtroom, and she saw fear there, real fear, the kind that makes children look for their mothers. The judge was a woman in her 60s, gray hair, reading glasses perched on her nose. She looked at Evan with an expression Lena couldn't read. Confusion. Pity. Anger. "This is an unusual case," the judge said, flipping through documents. A 10-year-old defendant accused of sophisticated cyber crimes against his own father. She looked at Evan directly. "Do you understand why you're here, young man?" "Yes, Your Honor. Because I took money that legally belonged to my father, even though morally it belonged to my mother." The judge's eyebrows rose. "That's a very mature understanding of the situation. I'm very mature for my age. I had to be." The prosecution stood, a man in his 30s with slick back hair and an expensive suit. "Your Honor, the defendant may be young, but his crimes were sophisticated and deliberate. He bypassed multiple security protocols, accessed confidential financial information, and transferred $500,000. This wasn't a childish prank. This was calculated theft. If you're angry about what's happening to this family, if you want to see how this impossible situation resolves, then do me a favor. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Leave a comment telling me what you would do in Lena's position. And subscribe to this channel so we can keep telling stories that matter. Because what happens next will challenge everything you think you know about justice. The public defender assigned to Evan's case was overwhelmed, carrying too many files, fighting too many battles. She did her best, but Lena could see the defeat in her eyes. "Mrs. Cross, I need you to prepare yourself. The best deal I can get is probably 3 years in juvenile detention with mandatory counseling." 3 years. Evan would be 13 when he got out. A teenager who'd spent his formative years in detention for trying to get child support from a billionaire father. Lena made her decision in that moment. That night, she received a visitor. A woman in her 50s, professionally dressed, with kind eyes and a serious expression. She introduced herself at the door. "Mrs. Cross, my name is Amanda Price. I'm an attorney who specializes in cases like your son's. I can't afford an attorney. I'm not asking you to pay me." Amanda stepped inside, uninvited but not unwelcome. "I followed your son's case in the news. And I think there's another way to handle this." "What way?" "We put Marcus Hale on trial instead." Lena stared at her. "How?" "Your son had access to his father's financial records, correct? Before the FBI seized his computers." "Yes, but using that information would be illegal. It's fruit of the poisonous tree." Amanda smiled. "Normally, yes. But I have contacts. Former employees of Hale Technologies who've been waiting for someone brave enough to take him on. They can provide the same information through legal channels. And once we start digging, once we show the court what kind of father Marcus Hale really is, the narrative changes. From what to what? From a criminal child to a desperate son. From theft to justice. From a hacker to a victim. Lena felt something dangerous stir in her chest. Hope. Over the next 2 weeks, Amanda Price worked a miracle. She found 3 former Hale Technologies employees willing to testify about Marcus's business practices. She subpoenaed financial records through legitimate legal channels. She built a case not just for Evan's defense, but for Marcus's prosecution. The preliminary hearing became a media circus. Reporters lined up outside the courthouse, cameras flashing, microphones thrust toward anyone who might provide a quote. The narrative had shifted online. Social media exploded with opinions. Some called Evan a criminal. Others called him a hero. But everyone was talking. Inside the courtroom, Marcus Hale sat behind his legal team, perfectly composed, perfectly groomed, perfectly untouchable. He didn't look at Lena. Didn't acknowledge her existence. Just like he'd done for 10 years. Amanda Price stood and addressed the judge. "Your Honor, we'd like to call Marcus Hale to the stand." The prosecution objected. The victim is not required to testify in a preliminary hearing. The judge considered. "I'll allow it. Mr. Hale, please take the stand." Marcus walked to the witness box like a man accustomed to being in control. He was sworn in, sat down, adjusted his tie. Still didn't look at Lena. Amanda approached him slowly, deliberately. Mr. Hale, how much child support did you pay for your son Evan over the past 10 years? The court-mandated amount. Which was $800 per month. And what was your annual income during that period? Marcus's jaw tightened. That's not relevant to this case. Your Honor, it's absolutely relevant. We're establishing motive. The judge nodded. Answer the question, Mr. Hale. My income varied year to year. Between $800 million and $1.2 billion. A murmur ran through the courtroom. Amanda let it settle before continuing. So you paid less than $10,000 per year in child support while earning over $1 billion annually? I paid what the court required. Did you ever voluntarily pay more? Ever send birthday money? Christmas gifts? College fund contributions? No. Why not? Because I didn't want a relationship with that child. The courtroom went silent. Even the judge looked shocked. Lena felt tears sting her eyes, not for herself, but for Evan, who was hearing his father say out loud what they'd both known for years. Mr. Hale, Amanda continued, her voice hardening, do you have other children? That's personal. It's public record. You have twin daughters, Charlotte and Sophia, age 4. Correct? Yes. How much do you spend on them annually? Marcus's composure finally cracked. That's none of your business. Your Honor, I have financial records. Amanda held up documents. Mr. Hale spends approximately $200,000 per year on his daughters. Private school, activities, vacations, clothing. $200,000. While he paid less than $10,000 for Evan. She turned to the judge. This isn't about theft, Your Honor. This is about a child who saw the grotesque inequity of his situation and tried, in the only way he knew how, to balance the scales. The prosecution objected. Emotional manipulation is not a legal defense. But public opinion had shifted. The media coverage changed. Headlines that had read 10-year-old hacker arrested now read billionaire paid minimum child support while spending lavishly on second family. Marcus's business partners started asking questions. His board of directors called emergency meetings. His perfect image, carefully cultivated over decades, cracked and crumbled under scrutiny. Victoria, his wife, filed for divorce 3 days after his testimony. The papers cited emotional cruelty and deception. She was seeking full custody of the twins. Everything Marcus had built, everything he'd protected by abandoning Evan, began to fall apart. The final hearing happened 6 weeks after Evan's arrest. The courtroom was packed. Lena sat in the front row, Amanda beside her, both women exhausted but determined. The judge entered, and everyone stood. She sat, gestured for them to do the same, and opened a folder. I've reviewed all the evidence in this case, she began. And I've struggled with this decision more than any I've made in 20 years on the bench. On one hand, we have clear violations of federal law. On the other hand, we have a child who felt abandoned by a father who had the means to provide but chose not to. She looked at Evan. Young man, what you did was illegal. You understand that? Yes, Your Honor. And you understand that there have to be consequences? Yes, Your Honor. But I also understand why you did it. The judge's voice softened slightly. And I believe this case represents a systemic failure. A failure of the child support system to account for extreme wealth disparity. A failure of a father to acknowledge his moral obligations. A failure of society to protect children from parental abandonment. She closed the folder. Therefore, I'm sentencing you to 2 years of supervised probation. You'll attend weekly counseling sessions. You'll complete 1,000 hours of community service teaching computer skills to underprivileged youth. You'll have restricted computer access, monitored by your probation officer. And you'll write a formal apology to your father. Lena felt relief flood through her body. Not prison. Her son wouldn't go to prison. However, the judge continued, I'm also ordering a full audit of Mr. Hale's child support payments. Based on his income, I'm adjusting the child support obligation retroactively. Mr. Hale, you owe Mrs. Cross $496,800 in back support. Plus court costs and legal fees. The $500,000 your son transferred is hereby considered legitimate payment of this debt. Marcus stood. Your Honor, I object. You can appeal my decision, Mr. Hale. But I suspect you won't. Because an appeal would require making all your financial records public. Every offshore account. Every shell company. Every questionable business practice. And I don't think you want that level of scrutiny. Marcus sat down. Going forward, the judge continued, child support is set at $50,000 per year until Evan reaches age 18. Additionally, you're required to attend monthly supervised visitation sessions if Evan chooses to see you. She looked at the boy. The choice is yours, Evan. Not his. Yours. Evan nodded, unable to speak. Court is adjourned. 6 months later, Lena stood in her new apartment. Not luxurious, but comfortable. Clean. Safe. With enough bedrooms that Evan could have his own space, his own computer setup, his own room to grow. The college had reinstated her, even offered her a tenure-track position after the publicity. Apparently, being the mother who stood up to a billionaire made you valuable in academic circles. Evan was in counseling twice a week, working through his abandonment issues, his anger, his complicated feelings about his father. He visited Marcus once a month, awkward sessions supervised by a therapist, where they sat in uncomfortable silence or made stilted conversation about nothing important. But he was healing. Slowly. Painfully. But healing. Lena's phone buzzed. A text from Amanda Price. Did you see the news? SEC opened an investigation into Hale Technologies. Looks like your son's hacking exposed more than just child support issues. Lena smiled. She didn't feel guilty about Marcus's troubles. He'd made his choices. Now he was living with the consequences. Her son appeared in the doorway. Mom. Can we talk? Of course, baby. Evan sat on the couch, fidgeting with his hands. I've been thinking about what the judge said. About teaching computer skills to other kids. Yes. I want to do more than just fulfill my community service. I want to start a program. For kids like me. Kids whose parents abandoned them. I want to teach them that they're not powerless. That they can learn skills that change their lives. Lena's eyes filled with tears. That's a beautiful idea. And I want to apologize to you. For what I did. For putting you through all of this. She pulled him close. You don't need to apologize for fighting for us. You just need to learn better ways to fight. Will you help me? With the program? Every step of the way. Outside, the sun set over their new neighborhood. Somewhere across the city, Marcus Hale sat in his mansion, his empire crumbling, his perfect life revealed as a carefully constructed lie. His business reputation was destroyed. His marriage was over. His daughters would grow up knowing he'd abandoned a son because it was convenient. But in Lena's apartment, mother and son sat together, making plans, building futures, healing wounds. They'd been through hell. They'd survived a system designed to protect the powerful at the expense of the powerless. They'd faced down a billionaire and won. Not because they were stronger. Not because they were smarter. But because they refused to accept that money could buy the right to abandon your children without consequences. So what's the moral of this story? What's the lesson you should take away? It's this. Justice and law aren't always the same thing. Sometimes the system fails. Sometimes the people with power use it to avoid responsibility. Sometimes a 10-year-old child has to break the law to expose the truth. But here's the real lesson. When you're fighting for what's right, when you're standing up for someone who can't stand up for themselves, when you're challenging a system that protects wealth over welfare, you're not alone. There are Amanda Prices in the world. There are judges who see past the letter of the law to its spirit. There are communities who rally around the powerless. Evan's story could have ended in tragedy. He could have spent his teenage years in detention. He could have emerged with a criminal record that destroyed his future. He could have learned that fighting back only makes things worse. Instead, he learned that fighting back, even when it's scary, even when it's risky, even when it feels impossible, can change everything. Marcus Hale thought his money made him untouchable. He thought he could abandon his son and face no consequences. He thought the system would always protect him. He was wrong. And every other wealthy parent who thinks they can buy their way out of responsibility, who thinks minimum child support is sufficient when they have billions, who thinks their second family deserves more than their first, they should pay attention to this story. Because somewhere right now, there's another Evan. Another brilliant child watching, learning, waiting. Another kid who sees the inequality and refuses to accept it. Another young person who's done the calculations and realized the math doesn't add up. And maybe that kid won't hack a bank account. Maybe they'll become a lawyer like Amanda. Maybe they'll become a judge who rules with compassion instead of just law. Maybe they'll change the system from inside instead of breaking it from outside. But they'll remember this story. They'll remember that a 10-year-old took on a billionaire and won. They'll remember that justice is possible, even when it seems impossible. Now I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below. Do you think Evan was right to hack his father's account? Do you think the judge's ruling was fair? What would you have done in Lena's position? Would you have turned in your own child or protected them at all costs? And if this story moved you, if it made you think, if it reminded you that one person can make a difference, then do 3 things for me. Hit that like button. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. And subscribe to Mr. Steven's Stories so we can keep growing this community together. Because these aren't just stories. They're reminders that the world can change. That justice can prevail. That children matter more than bank accounts. And that sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is stand up for what's right, even when everything tells you to stay silent. I'm Mr. Steven, and I'll see you in the next story. Until then, remember this. The most powerful weapon against injustice isn't money or status or connections. It's courage. It's refusing to accept that some people deserve less because they have less. It's standing up, speaking out, and fighting back.